Pinbot circuit activated.
Ooh, taxi.
All right, so here we are after 72 hours of dry time. And a couple things have popped up that I'm gonna need to fix. You can see there's a fisheye right there. And there's another one right next door to him, right there. So those two I'm gonna need to fill. There's a small fisheye still by Pinbot right there. I'm gonna fill that. There's a tiny little one right there that I'm gonna go ahead and fill. There is one right here by the back side of that taxi. And then the big issue we gotta fix is this. So that's right where that insert is. And it looks like it just didn't fill in. So I'm gonna drop her in that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna mark those areas so I don't forget where they are. And I'm gonna sand it just inside the divot with 600 grit sandpaper. And then I'm gonna use these little brushes here that I got that are specifically made for automotive touch-ups or fisheyes. And they're tiny little brushes and they'll do little drops. So we're gonna try and get that done. Okay, quick update. I have finished the droppering and you can see. So what I did was I droppered in the clear, okay? And if you remember, there was a big spot here that was a defect. So I put that in there, I let it dry for 24 hours. I came back with a razor blade actually and scraped back as much as I could to get it down so it's flat. And I did that because you don't want to necessarily use a sanding block as much because you might make divots around the area because you're gonna be sanding more. So here's the little Pinbot area. You can see that's now flat. The areas down here, those are gone. The one down there is gone. So I think I was able to get rid of everything. And now what I'm gonna do is flat sand this with 800, then 1000, then 1200, then 1500, and we're gonna see what we look like. All right, so this is after sanding out to 3000 grit. And I don't know if you guys can see or not, but they're starting to get a little bit of a sheen on the playfield. So I guess that's a good sign. All of my divots are gone. Here's the one that was up here, that's gone. The jackpot area is good. There was one that was here, that's now gone. The one by Pinbot is gone. Maybe a tiny touch of it right there. I don't have to worry about. There were two over here. Trying to catch the light. Those are gone. And then the one by this guy is gone. So, successfully fixed all of my issues with divots. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this thing cure at this stage for about a week before I cut and polish it, because I'm not ready to do the playfield swap anyway, so there's really no point in cutting and polishing it right now. And I just want to give the clear a chance to cure really well before I cut it and polish it out. All right, so it has been a little over a week since I last touched this playfield. It's been sanded down to 2500 grit. I will do a little shout out for this little thing that I bought. This is a sanding block that I bought off Amazon. It's called a Preppin' Weapon, and it's purple and it's amazing. So this thing has these nice lever thing locks that grab the paper. It doesn't let the paper slip, and it's really comfortable in your hand, and it's nice and long and flat. So this works really well if you want to try that out. Not shopping for a sponsorship or anything. All right, I'm going to use a series of cutting and polishing compounds. This is from Chemical Guys, and this was really highly recommended for automotive clear coat cutting and polishing, so I figured it'd work well for pinball. We're going to start with this 32, which is their extreme. This is their coarsest grit, and this is going to take out any heavy swirls or scratches that are in the finish. And but we don't want to be too aggressive with this because it is pretty stout stuff, and I'm assuming you could burn through your clear with this. So for polishing, I'm using a Griot's Garage G9, which is a random orbit polisher and buffer. And it's about 200 bucks, but it gets really good reviews online. And since I'm going to be using this for multiple play fields and probably also some stuff on my car too, I decided to go ahead and get a nice one. It's got variable speeds. I'm going to start out slow. It's got a little trigger pull here. So I'm just going to spread this over the play field, and we're going to start cutting this. All right. Take a clean cloth, wipe this off. And what I'm hoping for is that we don't have any big scratches here. All right, so we've got some scratches that are deeper than what I like. They're not enough to catch your finger. Not exactly sure if those will polish out or not. I think I'm gonna go back with 1500 grit and give it another round of that and come back up to 2500 and see if we can get more of those scratches out. So I'll be back. So I wish I could tell you that we have positive news, but we do not. This is probably my biggest screw up in pinball restoration to date. So what happened? Well, I sanded the playfield down, and I had a lot of really bad scratches in it. And I think that was due to my own poor sanding technique. I think there was some debris that was on the playfield I didn't catch, some debris that might have been on the sandpaper, whatever. So it had pretty deep scratches. So then I tried to resand it and got some of the scratches out, but not all. So then I decided to try a random orbit sander with 1000 grit up to 5000 grit. And that got rid of the deep scratches, but it left pigtails all over the playfield. So I went through several rounds of cutting and sanding and cutting and sanding and cutting and sanding. And I finally got it to where I was getting to a point where the pigtails were going to be acceptable. And I got my polisher out and I decided to try and cut down and get rid of the pigtails. And I overheated the playfield on this insert. So I've already cut the insert out, but you can see that insert right there. He ghosted. You can see the 80K is a little bit white underneath there. So that is ghosting the insert, which means I heated the clear too much and the CPR clear separated from the insert. So I screwed up the playfield. All right, guys. So it's the day after the murder of the playfield. I am driving home from work, and I just thought I would record a quick little end to this particular episode. Very sad episode. So I've been thinking about it, And I think there's a few things that I've identified that I could have done better, and a few things that I think were out of my control. So, number one, did I do something to cause the ghosting? I don't know. I mean, obviously something happened where the CPR applied clear coat separated from that insert. Now, was that heat? Was it vibration? I don't know. It was odd because most of the time the insert ghosting that I've seen on older playfields is sort of like a straight line, and this one was much more of like a cloud. And that's why I thought it was really burnt clear coat that would stand out, but it wasn't. So I don't know if that was necessarily something I did wrong. I do think that I was too aggressive in one area for too long of a time, trying to get those pigtailed scratches out. And I think that part of that, if I go back to the root cause, part of that was frustration and not taking the time to go back and resand and or re-clear to get more of a layer of clear to sand back down. Because I had done a lot of sanding and polishing and cutting and resanding and recutting on that playfield. And I was getting a little concerned that my clear that I had applied was getting thin. And maybe if there was a little more clear, it would have absorbed the heat a little better and it wouldn't have ghosted. I don't know. So, am I done clear coating and restoring playfields? No, I am not done. I am going to chalk this up as a learning experience. It's a little bit of an expensive learning experience, but it's a learning experience nonetheless. And so I've thought about my options, okay? So option one is to try and repaint those two inserts, cut that clear out, repaint the two inserts that are ghosted, and then re-clear it. That process would probably take me about a month, I think. And that would be the most cost efficient, but the least quick, the slowest way, I guess, would be a way to put it. So I have not decided to do option one. What I've decided to do is option two, which is much more expensive, but a lot faster. And that is, I have ordered another CPR playfield. And what I'm going to do when I get that playfield is I'm going to take some high-resolution photos and scans of that playfield bare, and I'm going to use that playfield for the playfield swap for this taxi. I've already got my side art done and ordered. Those decals should be in a week or so. And I don't want to wait a month or two to get the playfield ready to be able to do the swap, etc. So what I decided to do was go ahead and spend the money and get another playfield, and I'm going to do the swap, and then two things are going to happen. So probably after I do the dolly, which is the game that one of my customers wants me to do that I can make money off of, that'll kind of help fund my extra CPR playfield. What I'm going to do after I finish the dolly is I'm going to start to delve into more of the playfield restoration side of things, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to fix and re-clear the original CPR playfield that I just ghosted the inserts in. And my goal there will be to, number one, learn how to do that process, how to do the stenciling, how to cut the frisket stencils out so I can then airbrush in the letters correctly, all that stuff. And I'm going to use those high resolution photos that I'm going to take of the new playfield to do that. The other thing I'm going to do is, once that original taxi playfield is completely stripped, I'm going to take everything off of it, and I'm going to remove the Mylar, and I'm going to try and do a full playfield restoration on that playfield, and see if I can get those things done, and then clear both of those playfields at the same time. That's going to be my practice for the Theater of Magic playfield, because that is the playfield that if I screw that playfield up, it's going to be a little bit harder to deal with, because the only manufacturer that makes Theater of Magic is Mirko, and I don't want to use a Mirko playfield. I've heard bad things about their clear. It chips. They're the ones that make the or they used to at least make the JJP playfield. Supposedly they said that their clear is better now. But also, to be quite honest, everything I've heard about Mirko, everything I've seen from Mirko when he's responded to people on the Pinside forums, he's just not a nice guy. And he doesn't have good customer service, and I just don't want to support that kind of a business model. So I figure this way, I'm going to just chalk up my $800 or $900 expense as my tuition for learning how to restore playfields. And I'm going to go through and do that CPR playfield and the original Taxi playfield and try and get both of those restored and painted and cleared and finished. And when that's done, I'm going to do the Theater of Magic. So that is the plan. I feel okay about that plan. It still stings that I was very close on this Taxi playfield that I had. I mean, I was literally, I think back to yesterday, and I think that when I did the cutting the first time, and I saw that there were just a few of those pigtails left, rather than going back and going, all right, I'm going to cut this again, and I'm going to get these out, two things I could have done. One is step away from it for several hours and let that playfield cool off. Because after that first round of cutting, when I put my back of my hand on the playfield, it was warm. It wasn't hot, but it was warm. And I don't think I let it cool enough to take another round of cutting. So I was starting with an already warm playfield, and then I tried to cut it again, and I think that's part of the problem. The other thing I could have done, and I probably should have done, is when I saw those pigtails, I should have just gone back with 2500 grit sandpaper by hand and sanded them out and then recut it after that. And I think if I had had the patience to do that, I probably would have gotten a perfectly acceptable result and not ghosted that insert. But once again, I think my error was that I was impatient and I was frustrated with the process, because I didn't film it all, but it was a good week of sanding and cutting and resanding and recutting and resanding and recutting, and it just wasn't getting much better. So, I think I'm going to chalk it up to a learning experience, and I'm going to try and be much more patient with my next round of clear coating and playfield restoration, and just not rush things, and realize that, this is a hobby and it's supposed to be fun. And if I'm not having fun, I need to give myself the permission to step away and go do something else for a week and not feel like I'm under some kind of a deadline, because then it's not fun anymore. So that's my plan. Long-winded. I'm stuck in traffic. But that's what we're going to do. So honestly, I think for a week, what I'm going to do is I've got a poker table that I'm going to put up in my arcade that I need to refinish, and I'm going to do that. And so I probably am not going to post another video for 2 weeks. The next video I will have is going to be cabinet, the first parts of cabinet restoration on the Taxi. I'm going to pull the playfield out and set it over on my table and start working on that cabinet to get ready to put the decals on. So that's the plan. I am back at the saddle. I never said this was going to be high-end pins. I never said that I knew everything. And I think when I started the channel, I said that I was going to make mistakes and hopefully learn from them. And if anybody watching can learn from it or learn along with me, fantastic. But here's proof that I screw stuff up too. So thanks for watching. See you in 2 weeks.